We look at what it is that's going on and what we need to actually work on from a HR perspective. So the first thing I always look at is how many people have we got? What are they doing? Are they working to the right standards? Are they off sick all the time, which quite often there's a few people that are on the sick quite often. And how do we actually start to manage all of those things so that you're not being sucked down by all that horrible admin and stuff that just sucks your energy and just shouldn't need to focus on, so that you can move your business forward.
You're watching the Stable Business Podcast. I'm your host, Jenni Bush, and I'm here to chat all things equine business with a new episode every week from me or the best in the biz. Now, before we get started, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the bell to be notified when a new episode drops. Welcome to the Stable Business Podcast, Shona. So, Shona, you are doing HR with Lilac HR. So, tell us a little bit more about what that involves when it comes to running sort of businesses, and especially equine business.
Oh, that's a really good question. So it involves everything. So HR typically is a people business, but most businesses can't really operate unless you have people in them. So it involves everything from finding the right people to come into a business, working out how we can keep those people engaged, performing at the right level and doing all the things they should, exiting them if we need to, but also looking to work with the businesses to kind of identify what it is they're working to and look at how we can get HR and the people within their business to actually help them get there, because you can't do it all on your own, can you? Like, you know as well as I do, Jenni, you can't do everything. You can't be all of the things. So if you're bringing people into your business, even if they're on a freelance basis, they have to be right. They have to have the right skills. They have to have the right attitudes, and all of that will impact what happens at the end of the year or the quarter or whatever it is, that you're working towards, and it will impact your goals. I started the beginning of the year with a fully employed member of staff, and now I've gone to completely freelance staff because it just didn't work. It wasn't getting me to where I needed to be. And that's what HR really is all about. So I go into different businesses, whether they are an equestrian centre, whether they are a marketing agency or a restaurant or whatever their business might be, and we look at what it is that's going on and what we need to actually work on from a HR perspective. So the first thing I always look at is how many people have we got? What are they doing? Are they working to the right standards? Are they off sick all the time, which quite often there's a few people that are on the sick quite often. And how do we actually start to manage all of those things so that you're not being sucked down by all that horrible admin and stuff that just sucks your energy and just shouldn't need to focus on, so that you can move your business forward.
Yeah, and that's so important, isn't it? Especially like when you are at that stage where you need to have help, that you've got that strategy and the systems in place to actually be able to tweak and adjust and everything. So would you say, even if like a business owner was thinking about bringing on somebody into their business, and they're thinking, well, do I go with a freelance or self-employed basis, or do I actually hire somebody? Like, is it still worth getting HR support for that? Or do you think that a lot of them shy away because they just think, oh, they're just going to be freelance or self-employed or something? Yeah.
I mean, if they're not directly employed by you, then there's only so much you can actually do from a HR perspective. But that doesn't mean you can't get help with drafting contracts, having procedures, right? You still have a handbook. You can have a whole handbook for just your freelancers, because the whole point of these documents is to govern the relationship between you and the person that you're engaging, either on a freelance or an employed basis. And it gives you a really good reference point as the employer, as the business owner, to say, do you know what, if this weird and wonderful situation ever occurs, this is what happens. Like you'll see in most contracts, there is a clause where what happens if one party dies. And that's whether you're engaging me as a HR consultant or a business coach or whoever it is you might be working with, there'll be a clause in there. And you really hope you're never going to have to use it. And it's probably a weird situation that doesn't come up very often, but it might. So that's the benefit of having those documents in place and having that support early.
Yeah, and to create all those things. And I know I've worked in businesses where I have created those handbooks and I have helped to do that. But again, there's always that legal worry as well when it comes to staff and everything. And I think that's probably where actually getting somebody like yourself in can also give you that peace of mind. Because I know I've had moments of anxiety in doing things. Go, is this legal? Am I allowed to do this? Because there are a few sort of black grey areas that it's.
Yeah, 100%. Like everything I do is in the grey, because where it's black and white, you know the answer, don't you? Like it's really clear. But HR is literally 99% grey. So yeah, and a lot of my clients will come to me and they'll say, "Oh, it's not even a sort of complicated situation. It will just be something like, this person's off sick. Am I allowed to ring them? Am I allowed to ask them why they're off sick? Am I allowed to say, well, actually, we saw you in the town centre at Costa yesterday, so I don't think your leg is broken. Am I allowed to say that?" And yeah, of course you are. But having that reassurance of being able to kind of pick up the phone and just ask those what you feel are silly questions, but actually they're not, because there's so much red tape, so many hoops you have to jump through now.
You have to cover your rear end, don't you?
Yes, you do. You do.
My husband is a manager for Network Rail, and he has a team of about 20 people under him. And again, I know how much he leans on their HR support. So I can imagine if you are in a position where you're running your own business, like you've got it, what would you do? I mean, how would you answer those questions? Like, so if somebody was looking to sort of start on those things, what would your advice be to them?
I suppose if you're in a position where you haven't got any HR support, then the first thing to think about is what is reasonable in this scenario, because 9 times out of 10, the law just asks you to be reasonable, just asks you to think about, is this fair? Is this something that we should be doing? So that's like the first point. If you're still like, I have no idea what reasonable even means, because it is a bit how long's a piece of string, no idea where to even go, don't know what to do, don't know what to say, just find someone like myself, or, there's loads of HR supports out there that are fantastic. Just pick up the phone and speak to a human being. There's lots and lots of big HR consultancies, big corporates that will give you a really, really good price for HR support, but it's really difficult to actually get hold of a human being who will just give you a straightforward answer. So that would be my recommendation. Just ask the question, like just find someone who's like, do you know what? I want a 15-minute call, just want to pay for 10-15 minutes of your time to just ask a question. You don't necessarily have to sign up for big packages and spend thousands. It shouldn't be like that anyway. But just ask the questions. There's nothing wrong. Like, you're not expected as a business owner to know everything. We all spend time learning how to master Instagram and social media. So why not spend some time learning about your HR stuff and how to actually do all of those things in a way that feels calm and safe and not stressful.
Yeah, and I think there's this element of we feel, a lot of people feel that they should know the answers to things, or that they should be able to build their business on their own, and that they should. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help, and actually it's the best way, isn't it, to grow your business, is to get that help, to get that support, so that it can sort of move your business forward. Which sort of brings me round to like think about how I've watched the progress of your business. Like, you've just moved into a new sort of office and everything. Yeah. So like, what would your advice be to somebody starting a business? Because I mean, how many years have you been running now?
So we've been running for 5 years now, but I think it was May 2020 when I quit my job and went full time in the business. So technically only really 3 years, because there was 2 years where I was just posting on Facebook and pretending to have a business. I guess the tip for anyone starting out in a business is just learn all the stuff that you can. I actually think one of your courses, Jenny, was actually one of the first things that I ever did. I think it was one of your Facebook challenges from way back in the day, just learning what you need to post, what you need to say, because you have all these questions, don't you? Like, I don't even know where to begin. So find all the free courses, use all the free resources, just soak it all up, find people online that you want to be like and you want to emulate, and just see what they do. Like, I still do it now. I was actually doing it last night for a separate business that I run. Just find a website that you like the look of and just copy the layout. Oh, I like how they've done that and done that design. Lovely. Don't copy the content, obviously, but see what they're doing. See see if there's a pretty aesthetic to their Instagram, and see if you can kind of make that, you know, the same, and just soak up the knowledge. There's so many people out there that are willing to help. Just soak it all in, be a sponge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think watching your progress over the last few years, I think as going right back to probably the start of my business as well as the start of yours, we've sort of grown. And I think one of the key things that I admire about how you've done it is also like your relationships with other business owners. And I see a lot of it, like where you're off to networking. And I know that you work with a couple of my other clients as well. And I think that's really key, isn't it? Is finding those connections and actually getting that support and knowing that you've got those people around you.
Yeah.
So are there any other tips that you would share with other people about their business and stuff?
You could write a book, couldn't you? You could write a book. Yeah, I think don't be afraid of competition. I think a lot of people when they're starting out are really worried about, is there room for me in the market? Is there enough work to go around? They might be better than me. And I've experienced it with other HR consultants in my area. Like there's a couple that I get on with really well, and we pass work between each other, and we've offered to cover each other's holidays, because to me, that's what it's about. So we'll go for a coffee, we'll have a chat, we'll share our frustrations about life in HR, because it's a very difficult environment to be in. But there's also the other side of it where people don't want to engage with you and people don't want to collaborate with you and work with you positively. And that's all right, but just don't let that be the norm. I think just be open to collaboration. Don't be worried about your competition. You know, the two consultants that live local to me, who I get on with really, really well, one specialty is mediation, that one. Excuse me. And the other one's specialty is learning and development. Well, mine's employee relations. So although we do HR, we do different bits of HR that complement each other really nicely. So it's really nice to be able to go, I've got a client that really wants to have this big fancy learning and development strategy. Go and see Jen.
And realise that actually nobody can compete with that, because that's your zone of business. And to have that, and I've had the same even this year. Like there's a lot of business coaches that I collaborate and work with, and then there's a few who are just a bit like, okay, don't need this sort of vibe, and you back off, isn't there? And I think as we move forward in our businesses, they're really good lessons as well to learn. Even we can sort of learn different things. So if somebody was thinking now, okay, right, I'm going to take my business up to the next level, I'm going to get staff on board, I'm going to get help, what would you say their first thing is?
The first thing you 100% need is a contract. That's a legally binding document. So many people come to me and go, I've been operating for 25 years and we don't have contracts. And we're like, okay, that's where we are, but you need one now. So shall we do it? So just do it from the get-go. Even if you're not 100% sure what the package is going to be, what hours are going to work, that's fine. Just get your contract drafted so you know roughly what you're offering. And you can do that at any point. Before you've even started recruitment, you can get a contract drafted. You can have it just ready to go. One of my clients worked with now for about 3 or 4 years. We started working together before she had even employed anyone. About 6 months actually before she employed anyone, because we got all of the processes and all of the stuff in place before. So contract is absolutely king. You need it. Your HR policies, your procedures, your standard operating procedures, your handbooks, it's all nice to have kind of stuff. But I would say if you are a brand new employer, you're maybe hiring 1 to 2 people, you don't need a document to communicate, hey, do you know what, if you want holiday, can I have 2 weeks notice, please? You don't need to go into that level of detail. It's good to have disciplinary and grievance procedures. But again, if you've got good HR support, you can actually build that into your contracts and then just follow the ACAS code of practice. Like it doesn't have to be a big ordeal. The biggest thing is get a contract in place and then work with your HR support to go through how you're going to onboard that person, how you're going to bring them into your company, how you're going to assess if they are culturally the right fit, if they are skilled enough for the role that you've asked them to do, if the role is actually a true reflection of what you want them to do, because quite often you get somebody in and then you think, actually, I also want you to do my marketing as well as my accounts, and it all kind of changes a little bit. So how you can go through that process, how you can manage what happens if they go off sick, how you can manage what happens if their performance dips, and just have that support ongoing from the start. It just makes it so much easier, because then you can just go, hey, Shona, or whoever it is, I don't know the answer to this, help me. And it doesn't have to be stressful.
I think that's so key. In order to do that in our business, we need to be leading. We need to get ourselves in a position where we can lead the way. And one of the things that I'll often say to people is you do need that space where you can openly go, I don't know what I'm doing right now, because you can't do that in front of your client or your clients or your staff or whatever. So it's kind of what I often say to people, ring me, moan at me. If you've got something that you need, we can work through it. I'm a professional, this is what I do, and it's the same for you. And rather than have those moments where they then don't become a good manager of their people, and bring out the best because they're whinging, they're moaning, they're best to get on the phone to you and to deal with that. So
yeah, completely. One of my clients actually says, he rings me and he says all the things that he actually really wants to say to the person, and then he'll go, right, thanks for that, I'm going to go and do it your way now.
yeah, because otherwise we could get in very hot water, I'm sure. And it's not good for anybody. Whereas when you've got that support, it's always a really good thing in business. It's always good to have that. I often say to people, you're never on your own in your business. You should never be on your own. You should always have a team behind you. Even if you are still a solo business owner, you should still have people you can lean on, because sometimes friends, family, whoever, they're not interested, and they're not also helpful sometimes with their advice.
No, they're not. I kind of liken it to having a riding lesson. Like, I ride at my best when my trainer is stood in the middle of the school with me. And then when I try and do the same thing on my own, it normally goes to pot a little bit. And like you say about your friends and family, like my husband could be standing there saying some things that my trainer wouldn't be saying, and it isn't helpful. They're trying to help you, but it's just not the one. So it's very much the same with your team.
Yeah, and so it's about having those right people, those people that you trust, the people that you go, they're on the same wavelength as me, and they're going to get it, even if I'm, and to actually be vulnerable enough to let your guard down and go, no, I've got those people that I can, so that I can step up and be that leader in my business and be that person who can manage people effectively. And would you say that HR helps people in their businesses to actually make the most of their human resources, like their people, so that they can make more money? Do you think that happens?
Yeah. 100. If your HR is good. So I think the difficult thing that you have with HR is, I think lots of people come from a corporate environment where you are told what to do by CEOs, and you don't really have an awful lot of input into the overall strategy and how you actually want to do things in a business. And sometimes that doesn't always translate across when they come to a consultancy role. So I think it 100% should. The whole point of HR is not just to listen to people moaning. It's not just to process payroll and look at timesheets. It's to actually help you get the most out of what you're paying. Like, minimum wage now is extortionate, and I don't know how some businesses are still able to continue operating, because it's just insane. So we need to make sure that you're really getting value for money when you're investing in people, because that's what you're doing, isn't it? You're paying for a service, and if that isn't what you're getting, if you're not getting what you're expecting for that investment, then we need to be looking at why that is and working through that. And there's lots of different things that you can do with that, but it all comes down to the level of the business. So, if you were a riding school and you were saying, I've got someone who's worked here for a year and a half and they're just struggling to muck out stables, I probably wouldn't go into a massive audit on engagement and what we're paying. I'd probably say just get rid, because we haven't got time for that. We haven't got the margins to be putting up with poor performers. But if it was a slightly bigger company with slightly more resources and lots of other different moving parts, then we probably would go into that level of kind of granular detail and look at the bigger picture. So your HR support has to be relevant to you. It has to be someone who, like you said before, it has to be someone you trust, someone that you're willing to be vulnerable to, because this stuff is hard. Like, dealing with people in any capacity, it can be really great or really hard work. Doesn't matter what your industry is. I remember being in this is completely irrelevant really, but I was in America a few years back, and I was in a Walmart just buying some stuff, and the guy in front of me was being a real just a-hole to the lady behind the checkout. And I walked up to her afterwards and I was like, oh mate, people. And she went, honey, some people are just like hemorrhoids. I was like, that stuck with me forever. Because I thought, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it must be hard for you sometimes, almost feeling a bit like piggy in the middle, I guess, as well. Because you want to support both. And I was saying this as well on another podcast episode, that actually one of the key things is to understand what the role entails and what you're asking people, and actually what's realistic expectation-wise as a manager as well. Like, are you actually genuinely expecting them to because you want your value for your money? And I made this mistake in with some of the help that I've hired, and I'm being like, well, why is it only takes me a couple of minutes? Why is it taking them twice as long or 3 times as long? And it's actually like, no, it takes me that long. I just didn't realise because I'd never timed it, and actually having that awareness. And somebody,
you're so right. Yeah, I've done exactly the same thing with my team. You know, I've done the whole, I'm going to hire someone to do some of my bookkeeping, but I'm also actually going to ask them to create newsletters. Totally different skill set, and it doesn't work. So you have to be happy to kind of review things regularly. And I think having someone else in your business go, have you looked at that? Because that doesn't sound right to me. It's just really helpful. But you've got to get on with that person. You've got to have a good relationship, because otherwise it just gets on your nerves, doesn't it? Like we've all had that colleague that is just a job's worth.
Yeah, and there's always going to be those tough moments and those tough decisions and those times when you ask questions that they don't really want to answer you because they know what the answer is. and they're like, I don't want to say it because I know what the answer is and it's not what I want it to be. And you actually have to hold your ground as somebody that works with that person. Go, no, come on, I need you to do this. And I have that even as a coach, having to help businesses. And I'm sure you probably get that. There's times when you have to have that relationship where what you have to tell them is not what they want to hear.
Yeah, 100%. And the way that I approach that is generally to just be like, right, we've got 2 options, or maybe 3 options, maybe there's 4. This is what it looks like. And normally option A is the correct way of doing things. That might take them a bit longer, might mean they've got to feel a bit uncomfortable for a little while, which is normally what they try and avoid. But it's the correct thing to do, and it's least likely to end in a tribunal claim. Or there's the way that they really want to take it, that involves 0 being uncomfortable, but it's probably going to be very expensive and likely to end in a tribunal. So I set it all out and go, right, these are your options. Try and find a win-win. Like normally it means I'll come and help you have the horrible conversation, because it's not fun. And generally they take the right solution. Sometimes they take a higher risk, and you know what, it's their business, so that's fine. Like my job is to just advise of the risks. And I think that's sometimes where people worry that HR is going to come in and tell them what they can and can't do in their business. So I've had a client, one, who asked me, I can't even think what he was asking me now, but he asked me a question and he said, can I do that? And I said, no, because it's illegal. So don't do that. That's the only time I'm going to say no, is if it's unlawful. But the rest of the time it's like, well, do you know what? Like, I wouldn't do it that way, but if that's the way that you want to do it and you're happy to take that risk and you're informed of all of the risks, then that's up to you, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing. Do you find, like, in the equine industry, do you think that the HR business owners are doing is as good as it should be or could be?
I think the equestrian industry has got a long way to go to catch up with the rest of the business world. I think particularly in the industries that I've come across, you know, where you're talking riding schools and that kind of level. I'm not talking the big weather beater, you know, big brands, but some of the smaller equestrian businesses, I think the problem is they're so good at what they do, i.e. the horses, that the people are kind of way down the list. We just won't really think about them too much. And as long as they're still turning up and not moaning too much, we won't look at it, which isn't right, because the problem with that is that we are going to lose people from the industry, because who wants to go and work all winter outside getting stood on and bitten and shoveling horse crap for minimum wage? Like, we need to actually be giving something back to these people and encouraging them to come into the industry. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose them, and then we're not going to have that entry level into the industry. We're going to lose riders. It's not going to be good. We really, really do need to change that. And I think, again, a lot of that just comes from shifting the priority, like shifting the focus a little bit. Yes, it's about the horses, clearly, but you can't have horses without people to help you look after the horses and to manage the horses. So we need to be looking after them as well. And I always think if those equestrian businesses looked after their staff like they did their horses, wouldn't have a problem. I probably wouldn't have a job to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always the way, isn't it? It's because it's so much harder, I think, as well, and there's a lot of emotions all wound up, and because it is so physically demanding, it doesn't leave a lot of energy to actually be nice. I know even when I was working in, and I used to do a lot of volunteer management, and I was organising people, and I get a lot of stupid questions, and I'm a very patient person, and some days I can be really good. And I remember one day I just did not have the brain space, and I just remember barking something. You do it like this, like that, and she was kind of like, "Oh my goodness, Jenny, but you can be really blunt," and it's like. You've got to understand where, like, the role that it is, and it's hard, isn't it? It is hard, and I think you're right. The equine industry in the past, so I'm not saying now, and we often have to pick up what we know and what we've learned, and we're doing things in the way that we had when we were being younger, which is not okay anymore. And so it's like, how do we actually want to step up and lead, and how do we want to be the best business owners that we can possibly be? Because when you've got happy staff, you get happy horses.
Yeah, you do, and it is just shifting that fact. We're unpicking generations, aren't we? Of like, why can't we just use 14-year-olds as labour on a Saturday? That kind of mindset, and we really do need to shift that. And it is about being a good business owner. It goes further than just, am I a good rider? Am I a good coach? Am I able to care for these horses? It goes down to the business owners. And the most successful equestrian centres, riding schools, RDA facilities, whatever, they're successful because they're treating it like a business and they are driving it like a business. And I think it's probably not just the equestrian industry. In fact, I know it's not. It's everyone. You start this business because you're doing a thing that you're good at, like HR, for example. You start it because that's what you're qualified in and that's what you do. Doesn't mean you're good at all the other stuff. And it's just being able to recognize that and then seeking out the help and absorbing all the learning.
And realise those things, they are skills and you can learn them and you can get better and you can improve. But the same as everything, you get a coach to improve your riding, whether you want to do jumping or dressage, or you want to go off and do next level BE, whatever. You're going to get somebody that can help you. And it's the same in your business. Get somebody that can help you get from where you are now to where you want to go, and to do that, because I think sadly there's a lot of people who will abuse people in the industry because they just love horses, like because somebody's got this love of horses, they think that they're okay and they can treat them badly because they love the horse so much they'll still turn up even though you treat them like but that's wrong. It's just wrong, and so it needs to be moving forward, definitely. So is equine business owners need to know in order to move the business forward?
I think it just comes back to just treating your employees like you do your horses. Like, if you have a problem horse, you don't just straight away sell it, shoot it, chuck it out in the pasture. You don't just immediately give up on it. If you're riding a horse that's normally pretty good and it starts bucking or pissing about in the school, you get its back checked, you check its saddle, you check its teeth, you get the vet out, you do all of this exploratory stuff before you then decide, okay, this horse isn't right for what we want it to do, so we look at moving it on. It's the same thing with your people. If you've got a member of staff who's normally really, really good, normally really happy and chirpy, and they come in one day and they're not, don't just immediately be like, well, just got to sack them, which unfortunately is the approach, because again, it's that unwillingness to be uncomfortable. And I recently did a rider biomechanics session, which was really, really interesting, really, really good for my position. And the trainer put me in the correct position, but because I ride so terribly, it hurt and it was uncomfortable for a good 10, 15 minutes. And then she said, right, now we're going to trot. And I thought, oh, Christ. But that's what I needed to now feel better in my seat and in my position, and to now be a better rider for my horse. Same thing with your people. Just push through that 15-minute conversation. It's going to feel like a lifetime. It's going to be horrible, but just be uncomfortable for that 10, 15 minutes, and then you can push forward and you can move on. It's literally that simple.
That's great advice. Absolutely great advice. So if somebody wants to find out more about you, where would they need to go?
So I'm all over the socials, on TikTok, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, and LinkedIn, at Lilac HR Ltd, or you can nip over to our website, which is lilachr.co.uk. I think that's all the places. That sounds about right. I think that's it.
I think that's really, really awesome. So if you need any help with HR, do get in touch with Shona. As you can tell, she really knows her stuff. And thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolutely amazing episode. I can't wait to see what everybody else thinks. So thank you so much, Shona.
Thank you so much for having me, Jenny.
You're welcome.